The doorbell trembles the china in its cabinet. I wipe my hands on the cream linen and open to find Grace on the stoop, pale, mascara smudged, clutching her purse like it might bolt from her grip. "Eleanor," she breathes, voice paper thin. "Thank you for seeing me." "Of course, my dear. Come in." I step aside. The house inhales us. Polish and lemon, old wood and memory. Sun slips through lace and sketches my grandmother's china with a patient glow. I've laid everything out. Chicken pot pie steaming on a trivet, lemon meringue glossed like fresh snow. Grace sets her purse down and doesn't look at the food. Her hands worry each other, knuckles white. I pour iced tea to give her a minute, to give myself one. "What is it?" I ask. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Her eyes lift. Guilt, panic, love, braided together and sharp enough to cut. "I have to tell you something," she says, and the room stills. A clock ticks. Somewhere, the refrigerator hums. It's about Amber and Arthur. The air thins. I keep my hands on the tea pitcher because they know how to be steady. "What about them?" "They're having an affair," she says in a rush, like holding it longer would drown her. "I saw them at the little cafe by his office. Hands. Kissing. I confronted Amber. She laughed." Grace swallows. "She said you were old and boring. She said she'd make sure you got as little as possible once the divorce was final. She married Daniel to get close to the money." A soft cracking moves through me, like ice across a winter lake. The meringue holds its shine. The roses outside bob in a breeze I cannot feel. "Why are you telling me?" My voice isn't mine. It's a calm, older cousin of it. "Because it's wrong." Grace reaches across the table and takes my hand. The temperature of her skin is human proof. "Because you've only been good to us, and Daniel doesn't deserve this. Because I can't watch Amber burn a good house down and say nothing." "Does Daniel know?" She shakes her head. "No. I don't know how to tell him without breaking him." I stand and go to the window. The garden Arthur and I planted, peonies like pink fists, the oak we set in the ground on our 10th anniversary, pretends this is just another afternoon. Roots rot silently before they surrender. Above the sink, the glass shows me small and older than I felt this morning. "What are you gonna do?" Grace asks. I turn back. Something cool has moved into the space Shock vacated. I sit. I pour myself coffee and stir it, though it doesn't need stirring. "Nothing," I say. She blinks. "Nothing?" "I'm going to pretend I never heard this," I say evenly. "I'm going to smile. I'm going to lay the table just so. I'm going to be the woman they think I am." I lift the cup and let the heat settle in my hands. "Eleanor." "Some games require patience," I offer the smallest smile. "I have been patient for a very long time." Grace's shoulders tremble as she nods. "Amber doesn't know I'm here." "Good," I say. "Keep it that way." After she leaves, the house listens. The pot pie skin silvers over. The lemon pie mirrors the window's square of sky. I walk through old rooms, wedding photos, Daniel's first-grade drawing of a lopsided cat, the nick in the banister from the year he tried to sled down the stairs on a laundry basket. All of it freighted with a new, unwelcome grammar. By the time keys scrape at the front door, I have a dinner in the oven and a smile set like porcelain. "Smells good," Arthur says, loosening his tie without looking at me. "Beef brisket, like Thursdays." We sit. We talk about a gutter that needs resealing, a bill from the roofer. He checks his phone under the table, a glow washing up his throat. New cologne, darker than the one I chose for him last Christmas. He praises the carrots like they are a presentation to a board. He does not look me in the eyes. When he sleeps, I stare at the ceiling and count breaths. Somewhere in the dark, a decision takes its shape. 3 days later, Sunday dinner. Amber arrives without knocking, carrying a bouquet of flowers bought by the yard. Her dress is new and white. Her smile would blind you if you didn't know where to stand. Eleanor, you look wonderful, she performs an embrace, soft and practiced, perfume that doesn't belong to this kitchen settling on my shoulder. The table, she chirps, so elegant. Thank you, dear, I say. I hand her iced tea. My hands don't shake. Daniel will be here soon. She crosses her legs at the island, angles her body to the light like a woman who expects an audience. Actually, she says, voice lowering, I'm worried about you and Arthur. Her hand slides over mine, a performance of warmth. It's hard after so many years. Sparks fade. It's normal. I might be right, I say, as if considering an article in one of her magazines. Therapy can help, she says, then pretends to retract it. Or sometimes people choose different paths for happiness. The word sits heavy and greasy on the air. You think we should divorce? I ask, tone neutral. I can feel the edges of her joy trying to show through her skin. I would never say that, she protests quickly, eyes bright. I just want what's best for everyone. You're very thoughtful, I say. I feel the place where her perfume touched my sweater like a bruise. Daniel arrives humming, keys jangling, that gentle way he moves through a room, as if asking the furniture for permission. Amber becomes a different species, all light and laughter, fingers on his arm, her face turned so he can pour himself into her attention. Her eyes keep flicking to the driveway. Arthur walks in 20 minutes late, breathes, crisis with the Martinez account, kisses my cheek, then looks past me to Amber. The look they share is a camera flash, too quick if you're not looking for it, impossible to unsee if you are. The brisket slices clean. The conversation treads water. That vacation, Arthur says, too casual. Where to? Somewhere warm. Somewhere we can escape. She watches him when she says escape. The word decides it wants to be a knife and becomes one. That sounds lovely, I say. You're young. You should go. After dinner, when I'm at the sink, stacking plates into the dishwasher, I hear their voices at the dining table, pitch low and close. We can't keep doing this, Amber whispers, urgency shaven down to a thread. Not much longer, Arthur murmurs, leaning in. She suspect anything? She doesn't know a thing. The dishwasher latch clicks shut. I hum, some old lullaby my mother used when the fever broke. In the reflection on the oven door, I see two silhouettes pulled together by a magnet of selfishness and consequence. On Tuesday, I take a different train, walk a different block, open a different door. Catherine Ward's office is spare, glass and steel, no heavy mahogany to press on a person's spine. She is younger than me, exactly the age where smart women get told they're intimidating and learn to take that as a compliment. Mrs. Morales, she says, shaking my hand. Her grip is clean. Tell me why you're here. Because I refuse to be erased, I think, out loud, because I need to know precisely where I stand before I move. We mapped the years. 42 years of marriage. The downtown condo we bought for convenience and never used. Investment accounts like carefully tended hedges. The business that wears Arthur's father's name. And then the papers I bring out last. The old trust, smelling faintly of dry attic and older intentions. Catherine reads, then looks up slowly. Your grandfather was thorough. He was a worrier, I say. He liked rails on all the stairs. There is a provision here, she taps a finger lightly on the page, on language drafted in a different century without losing any of its teeth. In the event of divorce caused by adultery, the offending party forfeits any claim to trust properties. The house is in the trust. Several other assets touch it. Meaning, she says, if adultery is proven, you retain the house and anything connected to the trust. Your husband never owned it. He never can. The coffee in me blooms into something like a second spine. he doesn't know about this. From the way you're looking at me, Catherine says, I'd say he does not. When I leave her office, the city is itself. Horns, pigeons, sun off glass, and also a different map entirely. There is a road through this. It is narrow and paved in patience. That night, Arthur stands in his shirt sleeves, back to me, hanging his tie with the care he never gave to the truth. I sit on the edge of the bed and try on a sentence. I've been thinking, I say, about what Amber said, about our marriage. His shoulders stop moving. He doesn't turn immediately. He measures his voice before he lets me hear it. What about it? Maybe she's right, I say, and it feels like stepping into a cold lake. Maybe we should consider our options. He turns then, and I see it, relief sliding across his face like a shadow of a bird. He catches it too, and tries to paint over it with solemn concern. Are you saying divorce? I'm saying we deserve to be happy, I reply, wherever that may lead. I want what you want, he says, and the lie is tender on his tongue. If this is what makes you happy. We climb into bed, two bodies with a country between them. The law office is glass and leather and money. Sterling shakes hands like he knows where all the skeletons are and is on a first-name basis with them. Arthur chose him. Of course he did. I sit across the table, hands folded, the picture of a woman eager to cooperate. Down the far end, Daniel's knee bounces. Amber rests a hand on his thigh, thumb stroking as if she's soothing him when she's measuring him. We've drafted an amicable settlement, Sterling purrs, sliding a binder toward me. Equitable, given the circumstances. I read, I do not let my face move. A condo like a consolation prize. Half a savings account. A stipend dressed up as alimony. Arthur keeps the house, the business, the investments, every root of our life. Sterling speaks of continuity, upkeep, prudence, irregularities with the deed that will take years to sort. Amber sits a little taller. I can feel her redecoration mood board stirring under her skin. I see, I say softly. You've thought of everything. We try, Sterling says. He offers me a pen, already uncapped, the ink ready to absolve them. That won't be necessary, I say. Sterling pauses. Arthur's mouth tightens. Daniel glances at me, confused. I mean, I correct gently, that I don't need time to think. Where do I sign? Silence pulls the room taut. Amber's eyes flicker. Surprise, greed. Something like lust for a future that doesn't belong to her. Daniel leans forward. Mom, maybe... It's all right, sweetheart, I say, smiling at my son the way I did when he was 5 and afraid of thunder. Sometimes acceptance is the strongest kind of fight. I sign. Eleanor Elizabeth Morales. The hand that wrote that name on a marriage certificate 42 years ago holds steady now. Outside on the sidewalk, light hits the glass of the building and shatters into ordinary day. Arthur breathes easier. Amber squeezes Daniel and tells him how proud she is of our maturity. I tell her thank you like I mean it. They walk away planning my retirement like a garage sale. I stand in the shade and feel a calm so complete it borders on joy. The board is finally arranged the way I need it. 60 days, Sterling said. 60 days is a lifetime when you know exactly what you're doing. The skyscraper's glass doors breathe shut behind me, sealing in a different world. Marble floors, leather chairs, the hush of money. Arthur paces near the windows, phone in hand, tapping the screen like a gambler fidgeting with dice. Amber sits at the far end of the waiting area, lacquered smile plastered on, hand glued to Daniel's thigh. My son, pale and drawn, keeps his eyes fixed on the floor. He still thinks this divorce is sad but civil. If only he knew. Mr. and Mrs. Morales, a silver-haired man in an immaculate suit, approaches, palm extended. Richard Sterling,
Arthur's old golf buddy masquerading as an impartial attorney. Let's get started. The conference room table gleams, white enough to stage a war. Sterling spreads the documents like weapons. Arthur sits to his right. I take my place opposite. Amber leans close to Daniel, whispering reassurances, her perfume clouding the air like deceit given scent. Before we begin, Sterling intones, voice thick with practiced authority, both parties should understand this is meant to be amicable, dignified, fair. Of course, I say pleasantly. My voice surprises even me. It's soft velvet stretched over steel. Arthur glances at me, unsettled. He expected tears, fury. Not this. Sterling slides a binder my way. The proposed settlement. I open it. Pages of betrayal disguised as legal language. A single condo, our forgotten investment property downtown, half a joint savings account, whittled to something almost insulting, a modest alimony allowance like pocket change for a woman who gave 42 years. Arthur keeps the house, the business, the investments, every root of our life. This seems one-sided, I murmur. Sterling offers the kind smile of a man explaining taxes to a child. Your husband has been the primary earner. The business requires continuity. The house, upkeep would be a strain for you. Best to simplify. Until certain irregularities are sorted with the trust, he adds casually, flicking a hand. Might take years. Amber sits a little taller. She's already choosing drapes in her mind. I trace the lines of my name printed at the bottom of the final page. Eleanor Elizabeth Morales. 42 years bound up in ink and the illusion of fairness. Sterling uncaps the pen and slides it toward me. Sign here. Here. Initial there. Arthur leans in, soft-voiced. This way you won't worry about taxes, Eleanor. No heavy responsibilities. Manageable. He says it as if I'm a frail bird grateful for a smaller cage.
No need, I say. I take the pen. I sign my name in clean, precise strokes. The room holds its breath. Even Amber looks startled. Mom, Daniel asks softly, are you sure? I meet his eyes, my sweet, innocent son, still believing in fairness because I raised him to. Sometimes acceptance is the strongest fight of all, sweetheart. Arthur frowns, unsettled. He expected battle, not surrender, and that is why he's already lost. Sterling beams, gathering the papers. I'll file this tomorrow. The divorce will finalize in 60 days. 60 days. Long enough to sharpen every blade. We rise. Outside the building, sunlight slices the glass towers into shards. Amber clings to Daniel, whispering about retirement homes and packing boxes for me. Arthur checks his watch, already distracted. They walk ahead, their voices humming with triumph. I linger in the shadow of the skyscraper, my face serene, my pulse steady. They think they've won. In 60 days, they'll learn the truth. The game was never theirs. The roses were in bloom when Daniel's car crawled up my gravel drive, but he didn't get out right away. He sat behind the wheel, motionless, as though the air outside might crush him if he opened the door. When he finally emerged, I barely recognized my son. His shirt was rumpled, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow, a man unstitched. Daniel, my shears dropped into the soil. I hurried to him. Sweetheart, what is it? He tried to speak, failed, then sank onto the steps of the porch like a puppet with its strings cut. She's been lying to me, he whispered. His voice was gravel dragged across stone. She's been lying this whole time. She's been lying. The roses behind me swayed, oblivious. I sat beside him, waiting. Some truths must crawl out on their own.
I found them, he said finally. Messages. Between Dad and Amber, hundreds of them. They've been planning this for months. The divorce, the affair, everything. His laugh was bitter, jagged. They thought they were so clever. My hands folded in my lap to keep them from trembling. How did you find out? Grace. His voice cracked. She called me, said she couldn't keep quiet anymore, told me where to look, what to look for. His jaw clenched. Amber laughed when I confronted her, said I was naive, said Dad could give her things I never could. The cruelty of it, dismissal, mockery of years of his devotion, was a violence no blade could match. She didn't love me, Daniel said, staring at his hands. She never did. I touched his shoulder. You didn't deserve this. He looked at me then, really looked, as though seeing me for the first time. Mom, how are you so calm? Dad betrayed you too. I breathed once, slow and deep. Then I chose. My son deserved the truth. Daniel, I said gently, there's something you don't know about the divorce, about what really happened in that lawyer's office. And so I told him about Grace's warning, about the weeks I spent pretending, about Catherine Ward and the trust, about how I let them believe they had won, all while lining the board with pieces they couldn't see. Daniel listened, silent but intent, eyes wide as the storm gaggered inside him. You knew, he whispered when I finished. This whole time, you knew. I knew. And I let them reveal who they really are. Sometimes the best move is to wait, to let your enemies dig their own graves. For a long moment, he stared at me, and then something in his face shifted. Pride, fierce and raw. I had no idea you were so strategic. I smiled sadly. 42 years of marriage teaches you when to fight and when to bide your time. What happens now when Dad finds out about the trust? That's his problem. I rose, brushing dirt from my palms. He made his choices. Now he'll live with the consequences. A car pulled into the driveway then, tires spitting gravel. Grace. Her face was pale, anxious, her hands trembling as she approached.
Daniel, she said, voice breaking. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't told you. You saved me, Daniel cut in, his tone firm. If you hadn't warned me, I'd still be living a lie. Her eyes filled with tears. I should have said something sooner. You did the right thing, I told her. You chose honesty over silence. That takes courage. Grace looked at me with startled gratitude. Daniel touched her arm gently, his expression softening in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. A connection sparked. Not romance yet, but recognition. Two people, scarred by the same fire, standing in its ashes. Stay for dinner, Daniel said suddenly. His voice was rough, but sincere. Mom makes the best brisket in the state. We could use something normal tonight. Grace hesitated, then looked to me. I'd love for you to stay. It's been too long since we've had truth at this table. That evening, the three of us sat around the kitchen island, laughter breaking through the cracks of grief. For the first time in weeks, the air in the house felt breathable. Amber's poison had left scars, but it had also revealed who we really were. When Grace rose to leave, Daniel walked her to her car. I watched through the window, saw the way they lingered in conversation, their silhouettes tender in the dusk. As I turned off the kitchen light, I whispered to the dark, Arthur and Amber thought they'd already won. They had no idea the war was just beginning. Tuesday morning, 63 days since the signatures dried in Sterling's office. The coffee was hot in my hands when the phone rang. Arthur's name lit up the screen. For the first time in months, I felt
amused. "Hello, Arthur," I said, my tone light. "What the hell have you done?" His voice was raw, stripped of civility. I sipped. "Good morning to you, too. Don't play games. Sterling just called. Says there's a problem with the house. Some ridiculous clause in a trust no one mentioned before." "Oh, that." I let the silence breathe. "Yes, I imagine that was a surprise." "You knew." His voice dropped to a growl. "You knew this whole time." "Of course I knew," I said, stepping into the garden. The roses caught the sun, defiant in their bloom. "You had too long," he spoke. "How long?" "Long enough. Long enough to watch you and Amber plotting like school children, believing you'd won. Long enough to document everything." He tried one last card, the weak one. "Where am I supposed to go?" Almost. I pitied him. "You and Amber are very clever. I'm sure you'll figure it out." A woman's voice rose in the background, shrill, demanding. "Amber." "This isn't over," Arthur said, finally. "Yes, it is," I replied, and hung up. By noon, Daniel and Grace were at my kitchen table, a manila folder between them. "We found this in Amber's safe." I opened the folder, my blood chilled. A copy of my grandfather's will, annotated in Amber's handwriting with notes on inheritance loopholes. A timeline of seduction and betrayal, dates lined up like a military campaign. And worst of all, a life insurance policy taken out 6 months ago. On me, Amber listed as beneficiary. "She forged your signature," Grace said, her voice trembling. "The insurance company confirmed it." Daniel's hands shook as he pushed another paper forward. "And this, a report from a private investigator. She had you followed, Mom. Your routines, your health, your friends, everything." My stomach turned cold. Amber hadn't just wanted the house, she had studied me like prey. "Detective Martinez has everything," Daniel said. His voice was tight, vibrating with fury. "Insurance fraud, forgery, maybe worse." We were still absorbing it when the sound of tires screamed against gravel. Arthur's Mercedes. Behind it, a moving truck. Amber stormed out, her mask shattered. "This is my house," she shrieked. Arthur slumped behind her, shoulders sagging. The movers stood awkwardly at the curb, boxes in their arms, waiting for orders. Daniel stepped forward. "You're not welcome here." Amber's eyes flared. "We signed papers. It's ours." "No," Grace said, standing at Daniel's side. Her voice was quiet, steady. "It was never yours." Amber's face twisted. Pure venom. You did this. Jealous little Grace, ruining everything because you couldn't stand that I won." "I'd rather be me than you," Grace said simply. Amber lunged. Daniel intercepted her, his presence a wall. "Get off my property," he said. His voice was steel I'd never heard before. Arthur tugged at Amber's arm. "It's over."
But Amber wasn't listening. She turned, saw me watching from the window, her face warped with rage. "You think you're clever?" she screamed. "You think this ends here? I know secrets. I know things that could destroy all of you." I opened the window, let the breeze carry my words. "The only secrets being destroyed today are yours, Amber. Detective Martinez is very interested in Helen's death." The color drained from her face. Arthur yanked her toward the car, panic in his eyes. "We're leaving, now." The movers dropped their boxes. The Mercedes spun out of the driveway, the truck trailing behind. Inside, Daniel collapsed into the armchair, his chest heaving. "They're really gone," he said. "No," I corrected gently. "They're gone from here, but Amber will face justice for the fraud, for Helen, for everything. The wheels turn slowly, but they turn." The house, heavy with ghosts for months, exhaled at last. That night, as we set the table for dinner, just Daniel, Grace, and me, I felt the walls settle into themselves again.
Not broken, not lost, simply waiting for the next chapter. Amber had tried to burn us down. Instead, she had revealed the steel in our bones. And this house, my grandmother's, my mother's, now mine, was still standing. So were we. Thanksgiving morning, 6 months later. The house smelled of sage and butter, of turkey crisping in the oven. Daniel stood at the stove, sleeves rolled, basting like a man who needed the rhythm. Grace chopped celery at the island, her engagement ring catching the light like a quiet victory. For the first time in months, the walls hummed with laughter instead of whispers. The doorbell rang. I expected neighbors. Instead, Detective Martinez stood on the porch, hat in hand, face grave, but not unkind. He said, "Mrs. Morales, I thought you'd want an update before the holiday." We gathered in the living room. Daniel sat stiffly, Grace clutched his hand, and I braced myself. Amber has been formally charged with insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy, Martinez said. The DA is confident. Grace's voice shook. And Helen? Martinez's jaw tightened. The exhumation revealed digitalis, in quantities that point to deliberate poisoning. The room fell silent. Grace pressed a hand to her mouth. Daniel's knuckles whitened around hers. "She killed her," Grace whispered. "We're building a case for first-degree murder," Martinez confirmed. Amber researched the drug online for weeks, and her fingerprints are on the bottles. I closed my eyes. Helen's smile came back to me, soft, trusting. Amber had snuffed it out with the same cold calculation she brought into my home. "And Arthur?" Daniel asked quietly. "No evidence he was involved in Helen's death, but he's charged as an accomplice in the fraud. Cooperation may lessen his sentence." When the detective left, the house seemed to tilt with the weight of what we had learned. Grace sat back, tears streaking her cheeks. "I keep thinking I should feel sorry for her. She's my sister. But I don't. Not even a little." "You don't owe her your pity," I said firmly. Step by step, Amber chose this path. Later that afternoon, the Gonzalez family arrived, their laughter filling corners long left cold. Catherine Ward came too, her husband carrying a pie. The dining table filled with food, voices overlapping, forks clinking. Real warmth, honest and uncalculated. I stood and lifted my glass. This year, I lost a marriage I thought would last forever. I discovered betrayal I never imagined. But I also learned I am stronger than I knew. I learned my son is a man of integrity, and I learned that family isn't always blood. It's those who choose honesty when silence would be easier. "To Eleanor," Catherine said, raising her glass. "To Mom," Daniel added. "Grace under pressure." "To new beginnings," Grace whispered. We drank, and for a moment the ache gave way to something brighter. That night, when the guests had gone, I walked the quiet halls. My hand brushed the oak banister Arthur once polished, the frame of Daniel's childhood drawings, and the door to the room Amber had planned to steal. I opened my jewelry box. There it was, my wedding band. The inscription, "Forever and Beyond." Forever lasted 42 years. Beyond ended when Arthur chose Amber. But as I placed the ring back, there was no bitterness, only clarity. That chapter was closed. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Thanks for today, Mom. Grace and I are so grateful for you." Another from Grace. "You've shown me what real strength looks like. Thank you for believing in me." Tears blurred my sight.
Tomorrow, I would help Daniel and Grace plan their wedding beneath that tree. Next year, perhaps, grandchildren's laughter would ring through these halls, and Helen's Haven would open its doors to more women who needed a place to begin again. Amber and Arthur had tried to take everything from me. Instead, they had given me clarity, I was not just a wife discarded or a mother betrayed. I was Eleanor Morales, keeper of my family's legacy, protector of what mattered, and architect of a future no betrayal could destroy. The wind rose through the oak branches, and I whispered to it, steady and sure. We endure. We rise. We begin again. At 64, I finally knew. Survival was not enough. I was building something new. Tomorrow, I would start the paperwork to turn that downtown condo, the consolation prize Arthur and Sterling thought they'd thrown me, into a shelter for women clawing their way back from betrayal. Amber's greed would become someone else's salvation. The wind moved through the oak outside, the one Arthur and I had planted when we thought forever was real. Its branches were bare, but not broken. In spring, it would bloom again. And so would I. The courtroom smelled of polish and nerves. Amber sat at the defense table, wrists bare of jewelry for the first time I'd ever seen. Her perfect hair was pulled too tightly back, face pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. The arrogance she once wore like perfume was gone, replaced by a flicker of something she could never fake: fear. Arthur sat beside her, shoulders slumped, skin gray from sleepless nights. The man who once commanded boardrooms now looked like he'd misplaced his spine. I took my seat in the gallery, Daniel and Grace on either side of me, their hands brushed together, an anchor against the storm. The charges were read: insurance fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy, and for Amber alone, murder. The words filled the air like nails hammered into wood. Amber shifted, twisting in her chair. For a heartbeat, she looked back at me. Our eyes met. In hers, I saw the collapse of every scheme she had so carefully plotted: the forged signatures, the annotated wills, the late-night whispers with my husband. She had thought herself untouchable. She had thought I was nothing but a soft, aging woman waiting to be erased. She looked away first. When the trial adjourned for recess, Arthur tried to approach Daniel in the corridor. "Son," he began, voice hoarse. Daniel's face hardened in a way I'd never seen. "He don't call me that." Arthur flinched as if struck. He reached toward him, then let his hand drop. He looked smaller somehow, as though the weight of every choice was finally pressing down. Grace stepped forward, her voice low but sharp. "You didn't just betray Eleanor. You betrayed your son, and you handed Amber the knife she used on all of us." Arthur's lips parted, but no words came. He turned and walked away, his back bent, as though the world had finally admitted he was no longer its favorite. Weeks later, the verdicts came swift and cold. Amber, guilty on all counts. Life without parole. Arthur, guilty as an accomplice to fraud, a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation, but prison nonetheless. When the gavel struck, the echo rang like thunder rolling away from a storm. 6 months later, the house was alive again. The garden bloomed heavy with roses, red as forgiveness and defiance both. Laughter floated through the open windows, Daniel and Grace planning their spring wedding. I stood on the back patio, coffee warming my hands, and looked toward the future I had not expected but had fought for nonetheless. The downtown condo was no longer a hollow prize. It was now home to 3 women, each of them starting over, each of them carrying their own scars into something new. The shelter had a name now: Helen's Haven. When I cut the ribbon, I whispered her name under my breath, promising she would never be forgotten. That evening, after dinner, Daniel and Grace walked the garden paths. I watched from the porch as he bent to kiss her hand, as she laughed softly and leaned into him. A new love born from old wounds. For the first time in years, the house felt light again. Not because the past was erased, it would never be,
but because we had survived it. We had claimed what was real and cut loose what was poison. I went inside, switched off the last light, and paused by the window. The oak tree Arthur and I had planted so many decades ago stood tall against the night. Branches strong, roots deep. It had bent in storms, it had lost leaves, broken limbs, but it endured. So had I.